I grew up on a quiet, shady street in a Chicago suburb. I've always dreamt about recreating my childhood experiences in Minecraft. Welcome to Cedar Circle. But what I need to do next is kind of plot out exactly where I want my house to start and end. And what I'm going to just do to start is just going to use some very light colored block. Now, in my front yard, so we had a cement driveway that kind of went up a hill. So we used to ride our big wheels down the driveway and then zoom down the street. In fact, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and start by building the sidewalk, because this is actually going to help me figure out the scale from the front of the house to the back of the house. What I'm doing next, though, is I've kind of lined up based on the satellite image the front of this house here, which would be the edge of my driveway, and then I count off 4 blocks, and then for my house and Jeff's house, I gave us 18 blocks wide, so another 14 blocks. Then we'll have another driveway, and then we're going to have 12 blocks. So their property are 16 blocks wide, our properties are 18 blocks wide, and that should allow me to fit the exact number of houses on the street that are actually there. So we've got my house, the Arhantises, Pattersons, then we're going to have the Greenleys, and then an open space kind of like this, where they basically bought two lots for these properties here, had 2 lots each. And then once I put the driveways in, that allows me to figure out where the tree was in front of our house. So when I was really young, we had a birch tree, and it was really tall. In fact, all along this side of the street, we had these tall birch trees. I don't remember them being on that side of the street. There was tree cover, but this one was super tall. And then one year, the roots actually broke down into the water pipes, and they had to rip the tree out. So all of this right here was like completely torn up. And the only time in my life that I've ever broken a bone was riding my bicycle down our steep driveway and then just trying to either bunny hop or cut across this section right here. And my front tire went down and hit this curb, and I flipped over the handlebars, and I broke the middle finger on, I think it was my left hand, or could have been my right hand. And so I had it in a splint, and very soon after, I was actually singing a solo in one of our school productions on stage, holding a microphone, giving the entire audience the middle finger. I also find it kind of interesting is that for my entire life living in this house, some of the houses did not have cement driveways. On that side of the street, I think everybody had cement driveways. On my side of the street, like every couple houses, there would be a gravel driveway made of a bunch of rocks. And it was kind of interesting over the years as the weather and the rain washed the rocks away. They soon became kind of like clay driveways with a bunch of stones embedded, as opposed to actual gravel driveways. It's kind of weird, the things that you remember as a kid, right? And once you get the sidewalk and the driveways roughed out, you can build your house. Yeah, I ended up going forward and building this off camera, and I didn't intend to. I actually just intended to rough out the shape of the house, the grid, and then the interior walls, and then I just kept on going and going. So there is the yellow house in which I grew up, and I want to talk about how I kind of scaled a lot of this out, because a lot of the scale of this is based on the satellite image, but also on my own childhood memories. For example, one of the first things that I used as a scale was that I used to run down this driveway here, and on the driveway there was 2 steps, and I used to run and jump off this top step over this bush and land in this grass here. And it was a little bit of a height, and if I jumped too far, I might stumble onto the sidewalk. I never actually jumped too short or hit the top. But one time I actually tried doing a flip, landed on my feet, and then almost killed myself, but I survived. So anyway, this is part of how I judged the distance here, is that very vivid memory of me running and jumping over the bush. Another key memory. So I'm going to describe some of the rooms in the house as I do a quick walkthrough. This is supposed to be a seafoam green carpeting. The cyan was the closest I could come. Here's where we had like a entertainment center with a TV on it. Really, it was very rickety. We had a piano. And again, I'm actually mixing multiple points in my childhood together into kind of memories. So like, I think this room here is a later memory, but the way the kitchen carpet looks is an earlier memory. And then my room, you'll see. So each room is kind of a memory from a different time period. We had dark green couches. They were not a green. They were like a dark seafoam green, almost like the dark prismarine color. In fact, this is almost exactly the color that the couches were. You know what? Maybe that makes it better. It doesn't look as comfortable though, does it? But it does match the colors more. And then at some point, my mom and dad added a bay window to the front of our house. And the kitchen. So this kitchen, you see I've used redstone lamps as the kitchen carpeting. This was like a indoor-outdoor carpet, very flat, whereas this, had lots of fibers sticking up, soft fibers. But this carpeting here is what I use anytime I try to make like a hotel in Minecraft. Or if you played my dropper map, the library, you'll know that I use this as the floor in the library, the carpeting. To me, the redstone lamps have always reminded me of patterned carpeting. So this is the kitchen, just utensils over here, small little kitchen table over here. Now, this hallway here is a little bit off scale because this was my room here. From this door, I actually could look straight down this hall. So this was like a plus intersection. But based on the scaling of Minecraft blocks, because every wall has to be 3 foot thick, I could not get it to line up. So I'm living with this being a little bit off, but the rest of the house is pretty well scaled. And yes, it was very tight corners. I remember this corner here coming between the piano and actually the entertainment center, which stretched to the end, was not a lot of room. When I was a tiny little kid, this was like a gigantic house. And as I grew up, it got tinier and tinier. So this hallway down here to the left, back here was the water furnace and the heater for the house. We did not have central air conditioning back in those days. This was the laundry room. There were actually shelves here, which I can't fit in Minecraft. But we have the clothes washer and dryer. And then there was a trapdoor, which there was no ladder, but you could drop down to the crawl space. So it's not high enough that you could walk, but you'd have to get down on your hands and knees and crawl across the gravel. And there were all kind of pipes and stuff down here. So we had a crawl space on our house. And then back here was a small bathroom with a toilet, a little sink, which I couldn't fit, and then a bathtub back here, and a little window out to the backyard. And that was the only shower we had in the house. For 4 people, we all shared one shower. I used to get up first on like school days. I would take a shower, and then I think my sister would take a shower. I'd get myself breakfast, And then I'd pretty much sit out here and watch The Bozo Show, Transformers, G.I. Joe. And I loved getting up early enough that I was completely ready for school and I could just sit and watch cartoons until it was time to go. This was my room. I had like a gold carpet, more like the gold of this door, this yellowish, not the true yellow, but couldn't find a good block in Minecraft. So this was a sliding door here to my closet. And then I had a bunk bed. Actually, it was called a loft bed, where the bed is actually up on top. And then this was a dresser. So like there were dresser drawers here. And underneath you could go in this cubby here, and there were bookshelves on this side. So it was almost like having a little fort. And if I attached a blanket here and let it hang down, I had a built-in fort in my room. And then this side here, you could squeeze around the back. There was a door here, and you could open it up, and it was like a closet for hanging clothes. And that's where I kept all my Masters of the Universe stuff. Now, again, this room layout is sort of like my middle school years, I would say. And, of course, Super Mario Bros. On my TV. It was a big, huge TV with a tiny little screen compared to today's TVs. And I had enough space here for my Texas Instruments computer or my Commodore 64. But what I wanted to put in this build was my NES memories. And one of the other ways that I know that this room is in the right coordinate position is that when I used to look out my window, I used to be able to see a bush right behind this tree on the side of Jeff's house, right here. And in the late afternoons on certain days of the year, the sun, which was up here, would send a particular beam of sundown and hit the bush. And the rest of the yard would all be kind of the right colors and shadows and highlights. But there was this one bush here which always got hit by a ray of sun and just stood out. Not like it was on fire, but that's the best way I can describe it, is like the bush was... It just wasn't part of the rest of the world. It was like the bush was being highlighted by the sun for some reason. And I would just be drawn to look at it for a while out my window. And that's how I know my window is in about the right position. So then at the end of the hall, my mom had a curio cabinet where she displayed different statues. This was my sister's room. Her room was purple. Oh, that's weird. That bed was definitely purple when I built this. I did a little bit of World Painter, and I think it changed the color of the bed. Couldn't really fit a lot of decoration into her room and closet, but it's okay. And then my parents' room is... The scale, again, is a little bit off. Now, they had a dresser here with a big mirror on it. Oh, their bed also changed colors when World Painter saved it, because I remember they had a green bed. The distance from the foot of their bed to the closet right here was actually probably more like 3 blocks, but I just could not get the shape of the house to fit the other rooms. My dad had a tall standing dresser here, and actually, now that I think about it, they had a TV on a TV tray in the room. So let's say the TV was right about there. And this was the only room that had air conditioner in our house. They had a window unit right here, which I will actually add. We're going to add the air conditioning unit here. And let's put a trapdoor to kind of... Let's see if I can put a trapdoor on it. Ooh, I can. Nice. Iron trapdoor. And let's go 3. Nope. 4, 5, 6. There we go. Now, I think I should maybe take the curtain off. Oops, I took the whole window out. So we'll put kind of a stained glass, or a foggy glass looking. Okay, so they had, yeah, you know what I'll do? I'll put the banner, like the curtain, next to the window. No, that looks weird. Okay, we'll leave it. So they had an air conditioner in their room, and we would close this door, and we would, my dad would sit up in the bed and solder different electronical Geiger counters and radar not radar detectors, radiation detectors and compasses, all kind of little electronic devices together. He was kind of like a redstone guy. And my sister and I would sit here on the floor, and either like I would play with my Legos or whatever. And I remember watching Star Trek, the original Star Trek series, on this TV here. Let's go with a fence, I think. Actually, should we go with the fence gate? I think we could go with the fence gate under the TV. Maybe something like that. That makes it look like it's attached to the dresser, which it was not. Let's try a regular fence. Let's see what that looks like. That works, I guess. So yep, we used to stay in this room all day because the rest of the house would be swelteringly hot. I also noticed that I ended up using white concrete for all the walls. I don't really remember what color the walls were in my parents' room. My sister ended up at one point getting like actually I think her walls might have been white and everything else was purple. I always wanted a yellow room, yellow walls. And my parents for a long time, wouldn't let me get yellow because they said that the color makes you too hyper. But because Minecraft is Minecraft and the exterior of the house is yellow, so therefore the interior of some of these rooms is yellow, and the rest I just use the white because they share walls. But it looks fine. From my memory, it's fine. And then back here, oh, this changed too. So back here, this bathroom actually had very cold tile floors. And it was the weirdest thing when we bought this house. This tiny little back room. This room was unfinished, meaning you would see the raw timber, the raw wood framing inside the walls. And you'd see the plasterboard from the room on the other side. There was a perfectly working toilet. I think there was a pedestal sink right here. And then for some reason, there was a door here when we first moved in. There was a second door that led from this bathroom with the cold tiles outside. And my parents, I think my grandfather actually took the door out and made it a giant window, all glass. So as you can imagine, we didn't like to go in the toilet here very much because there's a glass window looking straight outside. And I seem to remember my parents hung a white bed sheet. They tacked it up to cover this window. But there was one time that we did like to come into this room, which is when it rained, because the gutter back here would overflow and the rain would actually be coming down outside like a waterfall. And you could stand out this window and look out at the rain, and you had a full clear glass, unobstructed view, no screen, no window well to block the view, and you could watch the water. And then in the wintertime, that's where the icicles always hung the lowest in the house. All right, so from the backyard perspective, this was my mom's bird bath with a particular statue of a woman and her daughter. That meant a lot to my sister. along the side of this house, my mom planted marigolds and sunflowers. And along the front, we had we call them bushes, but they were kind of like evergreen, sprucey kind of bushes. Another place to play with your Star Wars figures. And then my dad fixed this gigantic pole and a huge, humongous TV antenna up on top of our house that would help us get television signal before there was such thing as cable. We had a detached garage with a bluish gray roof and dirty white walls. Inside the garage, it was wide. It was a 2-car garage, but it was really only wide enough for 1.5 cars, I believe, because we had a giant wooden workbench in there. And then here by the side door, we had our shovels and our bicycles. Up in the top of the garage, there were rafters where we would have our Christmas decorations and things like that stored out there, memories. And then my parents bought a giant patio, cement patio out back. And we had some little white wrought iron, or they were wrought iron like table and chairs set that then they painted white. And here's that back window to the back bathroom. For my, I believe it was for my first communion. We grew up Catholic. I saved up all of my money, and anytime I got money for birthdays, Christmas, whatever, we would have to put half in a savings account, and half we could spend on whatever we want, like video games and action figures. And when I think it was my first communion, I had amassed a good amount of money, and I actually paid to purchase a big, giant swing set. Now, this doesn't quite do it justice, but around the outside of our sandbox were some giant railroad ties to keep all the sand in. And I can remember my parents having bags and bags and bags of sand, because this thing... so I measured this out to be about 12 feet. 4, 5, 6, 7, 12. This particular one was 12 by 21, which I think it was a slightly bigger in my memory. And the distance from the patio to the playground is slightly different in my memory. Slightly further back, but best I could do again in Minecraft scale. So here in the grass, this is where... we just would hold all sort of interesting fun fairs and garage sales, or I would just be laying in the grass out here reading my ElfQuest comics. But this sandbox is where we had lots and lots of memories. And this jungle gym that I purchased with that money from that party, it had, in this section here, it had a tire swing and a normal swing. And then it had monkey bars going across to this, which had 2 parallel bars going down here on an angle. So it was like a slide, but it didn't have a bottom. It had 2 parallel bars. And then going off this way, it had like another climbing section to some more bars. So it was like a big jungle gym in the back of our yard. And then over here... Oh, I just sneezed. You could tell I have a cold. Was a clothesline. And at one point when we got older and we were into building forts, we used to build forts everywhere. We actually, right here in this corner, and I think my parents even helped us with this, we hammered some stakes into the ground. And when I say stakes, I mean maybe they stood up about 6 foot high out of the ground. And we nailed them to the railroad ties, and then we put slats of wood on the stakes. So we basically erected 2 walls like this, but higher. And then over the top of the walls, we took my Star Wars bed sheets and affixed them onto the top. So it was like a little fort with like 2 walls and a top to it, and then hanging on the walls we put hangers for garbage can lids and sticks, which were our swords and shields. And we used to have this as like our main castle, and then run the neighborhood, and we'd have other forts in other people's yards, and we'd have battles and stuff. So that is my house. Now, I think the next thing that I want to do is finish up this neighbor here, the Arhantises. I need to finish up the house behind us, and then the house kitty quarter, and the house 2 houses down. That's going to be kind of the main part of my the walls that walled in this backyard, because it was not this open. It was very walled in and safe feeling. I have some memories of this neighbor and the house behind them, and then the rest of the house on the street will be more vague. So I'm probably going to work on the neighbors first, and then we're going to possibly put some roofs on these houses, and then we're going to start working on the field and all back through that way. So that right there, that's where I grew up.